You are welcome back. This is session 8, ECON 215, Introduction to Economy of Ghana. In this session, we would discuss the basics in terms of economic planning, as well as the basis for what we call long-term or what we call perspective economic planning. So we would look at the introduction to economic planning, as well as the argument for and against economic planning. Yes, in this session, we would look at the argument for, and then we will also have a look at economic planning in Ghana. We would continue in session 9 with the rest of this, but let's look at this session, right? Introduction to economic planning. So now let's define what is economic planning. What is economic planning? It is a deliberate governmental effort to coordinate economic decision making over a specified period of time. So if I may repeat, it's a deliberate governmental effort to coordinate economic decision making over a specified period of time. But it is done in order to actually influence or direct, in some cases also control the level and the growth of key macroeconomic variables, such as income, consumption, employment, among others. There are two types of economic plans. One is the partial, and the other is what we call the comprehensive plan. The partial, as the name may imply, covers only a part of the national economy, say agric or industry, among others. Whilst the comprehensive plan is one that sets its targets to cover all major sectors of the national economy. So let's have a look at this. What is the planning process, and what are the stages in the planning process? So for any plan, we would have to go through certain phases. So here, let's look at some of these. One, we would have to identify the main objective of the plan. So be it comprehensive or be it an indicative plan, we would have to identify the main objectives. And once we have identified the main objectives of the plan, we would have to go on to set targets to realize the set objectives. So for every plan, there is the main objective, and then there is also the sets of targets that we would want to achieve in this case. And then we go on to lay down the framework within which to implement, coordinate, and monitor the development plan. So we would have to take note of these three. We would need a framework, one, to implement, and then two, we need to coordinate, and then the third bit, we have to monitor the development plan. There are also what we call dimensions of planning in this case. It can be what we call a space dimension, or it can be a time dimension. The time dimension is actually concerned with the time frame within which the plan would be fragmented in this case. And so for most of the time, we may have the short term, we may have the medium term, and then we may have a long-term plan as well. Now let's look at some of the arguments for economic planning. What are some of the arguments? Why do we have to plan at all? One of the reasons why we would have to plan is what we call market failure. So there's the big argument we call the market failure argument. The market failure argument. Most countries would rely on what as the market forces or the market mechanism, rather than governmental controls to allocate goods and that of services. So what you have been learning in your, the micro and the macro and on, yes, deals with allowing the market mechanisms to operate in this case. But the key is this: there are some disadvantages in terms of allowing the market to work on its own. And therefore, when the market is not able to operate on its own, we have what is called the market failure. So the market failure refers to the inability of the price mechanism to optimally or efficiently allocate scarce resources. And so when we have a market failure, then yes, there is a need for the government to step in order to make sure that goods and services are optimally or efficiently allocated. So there are some basic, examples we can give. If the good is what we call the public good, then what it means is that this is a good that is non-rival, or a good that is non-rival and is also non-excludable as well. So these are goods that are public goods. So if we leave such goods, what happens is that no one would invest in such goods at all. So then it then calls on the government to come in and then attempt to correct some of these failures. Then the other, which you might have learned in your other courses, is the monopoly power. And then there's the big issue of external, elites and then all that. And then we can also talk about what is called risk and uncertainty in this case. And then there's one big theory we also call information asymmetry. When all these things are going on, what it means is that it renders the market or the price mechanism ineffective and unoptimal, more or less. And therefore, yes, it then calls for the intervention of the government to direct in order to efficiently allocate the goods and services. There are also other, arguments for, economic planning apart from the market failure argument. And this has to do with the resource mobilization and that of the allocation, argument. And then the attitudinal or the psychological argument, then the foreign aid argument. The foreign aid argument is quite practical in the sub-Saharan African context or in the Ghanaian context. In this case, if the foreign donor or a development partner wants to invest in your country, or if he wants to advance aid to you, he would expect to see what you would do with the aid that would be advanced to you. So they would always require that you would put together a development policy framework so that they know what their money will be, used for. So if you look at some of the development policy frameworks we've had, the GPRS 1, 2, and then even the GSGDA, yes, one can talk about the foreign aid argument. So that, yes, the development partners are aware of what you would put their money to. Let's have a look at the last bit. And this has to do with economic planning in Ghana. We would break this into two. We would look at the before independence and what were some of these plans, and then also after independence, what were some of these plans. One of these plans is what is called the Gettysburg 10-year development plan, which I have talked about earlier on, and what are some of the development policy interventions in this plan. These would be the first plan for Ghana, or the first plan that was done in the Gold Coast. And then the other one would be the 10-year plan of development and that of welfare from 1946 to 1956. And then there is the 10-year development plan, 1951 to that of 1961. Then there's the 7-year development plan as well, which was from 1963, 1964 to 1969, 1970. Let's look at these, plan. Under this 7-year development plan, we were able to have major achievements in this country. And so this plan is actually one of the plans we would have to look at. It was under the 7-year development plan that we had the Tema Township, the Tema Motorway, the Akosomo Dam, as well as the massive infrastructure, development. And then we have a Champion's 5-year development plan from 1975 to 1980. And within the Champion's 5-year development plan, he actually outlined 6 specific goals, which we can see on our slides. So this is the end of this session. In the next session, which is session 9, we would continue to look at some of the development plans post some of these development plans after the, what do you call it, a 5-year Champion's plan, and then also have a look at some of the rules or some of the mitigating factors as regards the development plans. Thank you very much, and I would see you again.